DOT.
What's that?
dot.ca.gov/HQ/construct. Okay, so this is our construction webpage where the contractor can get their smoothest spreadsheet. This was active as of like 2 or 3 days ago. So here we have the payment adjustment spreadsheet. And we also have a sample PVP file that's got the 4 profiles in there. So if you leave today and you want to play with this thing, you can download this spreadsheet, download that PVP file, and walk yourself through this appendix. So on your own time, you can do that. I'll just kind of walk through it in general. So there's also a video here on, this is a raw video. I need to make it more professional, but it goes through what the steps a contractor's got to do to fill this sheet out. So walks it through step by step, which would take nothing but a lot of time to do right now. So we're going to skip through that. So okay, so once you download this spreadsheet, right, you're going to have that. That's the name of the file. I'm not going to download it right. I'm not going to start it right now, but our versioning is going to start out as, we started out, it was 1.00, and then I found something I needed to change. I changed it, now we're on 1.01. So always go to the website to download the latest spreadsheet. That'll have any new changes in it. And we're going to go 1.01, 1.02. If the specs change, we have different tables and everything's changed, right, we'll call it version 2. So we're in version 1, subversion 01 or whatever. Okay, so okay, so this is the spreadsheet as it was named. So if I were a contractor, I would have downloaded that empty spreadsheet. I would have loaded up my existing profile, my baseline profile, my final profile, and my pay profile, because I completed all the work, right? And I'm going to present this spreadsheet to the RE as a payment adjustment request. So when you get this request from the contractor, you're going to get this spreadsheet. You're also going to get this PVP file. So you'll get these 2 files here. These top 4 files are the actual raw data files that are zipped up into that PVP file that I'm opening right now. So you got to have ProVal installed on your computer first off, right? You want to make sure you got the latest version, 3.6. We had some old guidance out that said if you're developing grinding plans, use an older version, 3.5. Well, we don't need to do grinding plans anymore as Caltrans, so now we're saying use the latest version of ProVal 3.6. So when you open up ProVal, this is what you get. Kind of, sometimes it opens up to the last screen you had. So these are the 4 different profiles. So we're going to be, I would have received this ProVal project file and this spreadsheet from the contractor. So.
Can I ask a quick question?
Yep.
So profile that you opened up right here is what these guys would be getting from the contractor. It's already pre-populated with the data.
Yep.
The spreadsheet that's on the internet that you showed us
was the empty.
Is a completely blank spreadsheet.
Yep.
Right?
Yeah. Okay. Did everybody copy it, follow that? I mean, the one on the internet's got nothing in it. You got to populate it with your job data. So, okay, so the other part that's really important is, this spreadsheet's got a lot of macros in it that have all these tables that are in your specs. Otherwise, we'd have these huge equations that have if. You can't go more than 7 ifs. So we had to use macros. So, it's doing everything with custom functions. There's a lot of fancy things going on. But so when you start this spreadsheet, you're going to get this warning here. It says, security warning, some active content has been disabled. Click for more details. So it's not, if you don't click enable content, this spreadsheet's going to not work. You have to enable content. So this was, you can trust this spreadsheet. It doesn't get into your bank account. No. Okay, so I enabled the content. The other part that I found out like last week was I was working with a representative from Cal Appa, and we're like trying to work over the internet with each other, looking at the same screens. And I sent him a file that I attached to an email. He clicked on it, opened it up, and he said, "Man, it's not working. Well, I'm getting errors all over the place." And I'm like going, "Oh no," right? I click on that same file in Outlook, and I'm like, I'm getting the same errors. It's, it was working before that. I didn't know what was going on. Well, when you open it up in Microsoft Outlook, I think Outlook has some antivirus software. You can't open it up in Outlook or some email programs. You got to open it up outside of Outlook. So if you want it to work, so there's a warning on that front page: do not open within email programs. So this is kind of the same way with HMA Pay that we had. I had a lot of macros in there, and that's how we made our payment adjustments. So contractors are going to have to enable content if they want to get payment adjustments. So, there's plenty of antivirus programs. You can run this thing through something called Virus Total. It'll check it through 65 different antivirus programs to, say it's safe. It's safe. So, okay, so we click that button, right? So now I'm a RE, and I got this payment adjustment request. And oops. And what's a contractor? This is one lane, and he wants a $25,000 adjustment, 600. So I'm just going to pay it, right? No, we can't just pay it. We got to check it. These values are based on all the values that the contractor put into the spreadsheet. We're not just going to take him for his word. We're going to bring all the same data out of ProVal and make sure everything's. He didn't modify any values. So now these ProVal files, there's a lot of security on the ProVal files where they can't go in there and manipulate the ProVal project file or these raw PPF files. Is what they tell me. It's not something you can easily do. And if you do, it's got ways where they can track them. They can't modify those files. So, right?
Sure.
Okay.
Well, they can modify it, so you could still go back and find out what they did.
Is that how that works? Okay.
Yeah, we ask for raw data, but you can, a user of ProVal can go in there and see the modifications they'll make is through the filtering process. So they take out high frequency and low frequency. So it's definitely doable.
Okay. Maybe there'll be
Would you say in the spec to give raw data?
Yeah, so maybe eventually we'll make a video on that, on how to make sure they didn't modify it, right? And you'll help me because you went to George Chang's training on that. Okay, so the way the spreadsheet works is it's just essentially we have a front cover sheet. You can see the worksheets across to the bottom. We have the front cover sheet. It's called the Pay Adjust worksheet. We have 4 different tabs for the contractor to import values. These are the green tabbed worksheets. There's one for each profile that they have to import. And he's already done that. We can click on one of those. We'll see all the data. The yellow cells are where the contractor's inputting values. So he went into ProVal and basically just copied a table and pasted it in the top left corner, and it populated this table is what it did. So he did that for the baseline, he did it for the pave, and he did it for the final. Now there's a couple of these files where I just went and modified a couple numbers just for demonstration purposes so that we can see if he changed anything. So what we're going to do now is I'm just going to show you how simple this is. You do this a couple times, it's really simple. So if I had to do this in 3 months and I didn't do it for 3 months, it might be not as simple, but I would just go to my spreadsheet or my Appendix F and I'd figure out how to do it really quick. So I got to go to the ProVal project file, right? I need to import the existing profile. So I'm going to import the existing profile data, the baseline profile data, the pave profile data, and the final profile data. I'm going to cut and paste them in here. And all these red cells are going to go away because right now that indicates it's not the same as what's on the contractor's worksheets. So we'll go to the verification existing profile. We'll go to okay, so now this is ProVal, right? When you open it up the screen, you might come up with a different screen. So we're going to go click on this analysis button. This is the main button in all of ProVal. So this is where you can get into modules. We got all these different modules. Profiler certification, they use that to certify the profiler. If you want to do a rolling straight edge, you can click on that. If you had the profile data, you could model what a rolling straight edge would do through the whole project, rather than getting on your hands and knees and pushing a straight edge. If you want to do a grinding plan, you click on Smooth Assurance. We're going to be in ride quality, so that's where we're going to be all day here in this demo. So you click on ride quality, and I know I'm there because I can see this car button here. It says analysis, ride quality. And this top left corner here, it says ride quality. I know I'm in the ride quality screen. So now I want to run the MRI report. So you have to think through this logically. You're just going through these drop downs. So analysis type. So if I click that, I got 3 choices overall. If I select that, it's going to give me the overall MRI for each lane. I don't want that. If I click continuous, it's going to give me a moving average roughness report, which we might use for ALR. We'll use that later. I don't want that right now. Fixed interval, that's the third choice. That's the one we want, right? That's the MRI values. We're picking out 10th mile segments. We're going to click that. Once I click that, now I got more choices. Okay, now it's the ride quality index. So you click that next drop down, and you have all these choices. These are for all the other states. We use IRI and MRI. If I click IRI, that's what's clicked right now. I can see that I can get a roughness report on each wheel path. I want the mean roughness index, which is the average of both wheel paths. So I click MRI, select MRI. So this is the ride quality fixed interval MRI report. Remember that, right? Easy. So the threshold, it doesn't, all I'm doing is pulling MRI data out there. I don't really care about a threshold, but I'll just put in 135 because that's one of the numbers that we seem to care about. Okay, so now I haven't selected a profile yet. So you can go up here, you can select each one of these individually, or you can click on this button up here and it selects them all. If you wanted to erase them all, you click the eraser button next to it. We select them all. Okay, so now we've selected all these profiles and we want an MRI report. Give us the MRI values for every 10th mile on all 4 of these profiles. And once I click Analyze, that's what's going to do. But what I want to make sure I do first is make sure this 250 millimeter filter button is clicked. These boxes are checked here. Sometimes it seems like they don't check themselves. There's been a couple times where I think I had to check those. So what that does is models the 10-inch tire contact to the quarter car model. That's in our specs. We have to implement the 250 millimeter filter. That just smooths out the road over 10 inches. Click Analyze. So now it's analyzing that. It's running that quarter car model down all wheel paths. There's 8 wheel paths. And now it's saying, okay, what's the average fixed increment roughness? So we see one report down here, but I see 4 profiles up here. Why is that? Okay, what we see down here is based on what we select in this drop down. So right now we're looking at the existing. I could select the final. I'd see a different plot. So I'm going to start with the existing. So that's the fixed increment report, right? I can look at it in tabular form. That's the data that we're going to import. I'll show you how to do that. And then we can also see it in a map view. If I'm connected to the internet, you'll be able to see where this project's at. If you're not connected to the internet, this map function doesn't work. So we can zoom out. We can see it's, this is in Merced County on Route 59. We can see all the fixed increments. This blue fixed increment is the first fixed interval. It didn't go over that 135 value that we typed in there. And the second one did, so that's why it's red. It's just going to go red if it's over whatever threshold we picked up here. So there's a leave out. They must have put a leave out in there for some reason. There's another leave out. There's more leave outs further down the road. So at this point, we're just going to accept the fact that all the leave outs are correct. You'd be checking that. Now we're going to go to the table. So here's what you do. You're going to, any table in ProVal, you can copy to a spreadsheet by right-clicking in the header row. And you get a choice, copy table to clipboard or copy table without column names. We want the column names. So now it's on my clipboard. That's the existing profile. If I wasn't sure, I'd double check, make sure that's the one I selected there. Yep, that's the one I selected. I'm just going to paste it into the verification for the existing profile. Okay, so we see red here. Well, this is a value that I changed. our report says was 78, so ours is 101 less than what the contractor has. And I bumped this MRI value up for a demonstration I'm doing later. But so we can see the contractor changed one value. We'd return this thing back to him and say, hey, you're not supposed to change anything, right? Your payment adjustment request is rejected. So here's the summary that we showed you on that slide. You know, all four the first three rows match. The fourth row doesn't. You know, it counts how many don't match. So, okay, we're going to go get the baseline profile now. We already ran the MRI report, so we just need to go to the baseline, right click, copy table to clipboard. Go back and get the PAVE file. Right click, copy table to clipboard. We're going to get the final file. Uh-oh. Something crazy. Oh, that's right. Okay. There you go. See? It's the first time I did that. That just shows it works, right? I did that on purpose. I wish. Okay, now I'm mixed up. Copy table to clipboard. Go to verification final. Here's a button where each page, I can delete everything that's on that sheet right now, or just paste over it. Okay, so on the verification file, there's one mismatch. The baseline, I think I changed one. I also changed one there. There's one mismatch for the demonstration. The PAVE, I didn't change anything. Everything matches. The final, it's way off to the right here because we got more stuff that comes in here. Everything matches. Okay, so now for demonstration purposes, we're just going to assume everything matched, okay? Because I had to change some numbers in here to show you how fixed increment or full width segment corrections and partial width segment corrections work. So, okay, now the next thing we want to do is, okay, what's the next thing? We would go to our pavement, those PPF files that we got every single day. I'm going to go to the last worksheet here. Okay, I want to just do a check to make sure that the files that he provided me in this PVP file are the same PPF files that we received every single day. And if I would have been, when I got those PPF files every day, my inspectors picked them up. I'd be filing them where I could go get to them later. You know, you should do this check. So now we want to go to ProVal, and we're just going to do this. We're going to bring in the overall values for all four of these profiles and paste it in here. We're going to paste it without the column data. So next thing, you know, we click overall, MRI. That's the only choices we have. There's no more drop downs because there's no reason to have them. We're going to select them all, analyze. This just gives you the overall values. So now I want that table in without the headers. Copy table without column names. Paste it in here. Okay, so now I'd go to, you know, if I was organized as an RE, I'd have all these PPF files where I could go click on the PPF file and get the overall MRI value, and I'd paste them in each one of these rows, you know, individually. They're not going to be in a separate PVP file. But I'm going to take a shortcut here. I'm just going to say it's the same. You know, I could change some of these numbers. Some of these MRI values, when I looked at every PPF file, it might be a little bit different because they might have jogged a leave out a little bit, but you should see these numbers are approximately the same or exactly the same. So that's kind of the check to make sure that the data you received out in the field, that you witnessed, is the same as what they're submitting to you on the PVP file. You know, we can also look on the map and make sure, yeah, it is that highway. It's got the GPS coordinates in it. We know it's on that highway. We can click on the map. We saw that. Okay, so now I would go find my one and only profile I probably asked my District 3 office to run to verify, and I would have chosen the final profile. I'm just going to, I don't have that profile, so Now we're just taking a quick step here. We're saying, okay, this is I went and got my verification profile, and my district inertial profiler operator would use the same naming convention to help me out, except he'd stick VER on the front of the file name. That way I know when I'm looking at the file it came from our verification profiles. Let's say we had a 53, or say we got a 53 on that. This is the final, so I'm just going to type in 53 here. I didn't make it go up automatically because I didn't know that. I wasn't sure that people paste them in on the right rows. So now we did this verification step. The contractor had a 50.5, we got a 53. We're 5% difference. It's less than 10%, so we're verified. So we're doing that, one of those verification files per 10 contractor profiles. Hopefully more, but a minimum of one. So we are taking the contractor's data. We're using his information for payment, but we can only do that when we verify that that data is correct. We're not having to. The FHWA, we've had discussions. They're not telling us we've got to go verify every single profile. So, is there any questions so far? Okay, so the next step I want to do is go back to this payment adjustment worksheet. Right, and I'm going to look at this and I'm going to say, okay, my plans. I'm looking at my plans. Yeah, you got 1500s. You put the right number in there. The total ops, yeah, it was a grind and paid back the same shift, or it might have just been a straight overlay. That's one op. You didn't put 2 in. They're going to want to put a lower number in. Oh yeah, there's more options there. The layer thicknesses are in 500ths. That's what designers are supposed to design in. If you ran a change order and increased the thickness from 1500s to 1700s for some crazy reason, I did that a few times as an RE because I had extra quantity.
Show them what the red triangle.
Yeah. Okay. Each one of these yellow cells is an input cell, so there's wherever you see a red triangle in the top right corner, you can just hover over it. It's going to give you guidance on what you should be entering there. If you can't figure it out. There's a lot of information here. Like we're having the contractor enter the contract item price. It doesn't come into the adjustment calculations anywhere, but we're collecting a bunch of data, and we just want to know, what was the item price for all these different segments. So we're going to collect all these projects from all over the state, put them in one big database. We'll be able to sort based on common types. Okay, so we know the layer thickness is a function of we have to know that to know what table. We have to know the opportunities for improvement. And we also have to know what is it. Is it, we go to our tables, our specs. There's standard tables for HMA, and then there's standard tables for OGFC. And then there's another set of tables for OGFC on new. So when I pick this drop down, I have a choice of 4 different types. I have type A over existing uncorrected, over uncorrected existing surface, type A over corrected existing surface, type A over coplane same shift, type A over coplane previous shift. This doesn't really affect the table that we're using, other than we're just collecting this information for, so we can study this information later. So we can grab all the jobs that were type A over uncorrected existing that were 1500s. We can see how well the contractor did. If we go down to the bonded to open graded friction course, there is a special table for OGFC on new. So this one doesn't. We have 2 other tables for OGFC on a milled surface and OGFC on existing. They're similar to the tables that we have for all the other types of HMA, incentives and disincentives, but they're different. So if you pick one of those, that'll pull in the correct table. If you pick OGFC on new, now when we talk about OGFC on new, we're talking about HMA that we placed on that project, and we already made a payment adjustment for that new HMA that we're placing open graded over. It already had to meet spec, right? So this open graded friction course on new HMA, this is not part of that layer thickness. This is its own layer thickness. Our specs basically say just don't make it rougher. If you do make it rougher, we're going to charge you. So they had a 70 out there, and they put open grader down. They give us something rougher. Then there's a disincentive. If they give it to us as smooth or smoother, there's no disincentive. So if you click Open GFC on new, everything goes blue down here, and it changes a whole bunch of stuff. So that'll be rare where you're doing that. Okay. So we're just going to say this is type A over uncorrected existing. Okay, so we know that, we verified the contractor, all the data came out of ProVal. We trust his data now, right? Now we have to basically go into it and say, okay, what else do I need to check? Can anybody think of anything? Like the localized roughness, ALRs, we're just going by, we're giving them incentives based on MRI, right? Irregardless of what ALR values are. The contractor has to give us a surface that doesn't have any localized roughness that exceeds the threshold. So here he's saying that each one of these segments, if you read this header here, it basically says contractor certified number of ALRs above threshold. User entered, or if none, enter 0. So we're forcing him to enter a 0 here. He's got to make the statement to us that there's no ALRs. If he leaves that blank, that value gets a strike through. You can see what it is, but now this whole lane's non-compliant, right? So every one of these, he's got to basically tell us that he's resolved all that localized roughness. Is there any questions so far? No. Okay, now when you first get this spreadsheet, if there's any red on it, first thing you'll do is like, it's non-compliant. Give me something that meets spec. It's non-compliant. What are you going to do, contractor? So there can't be any red, or you're just going to reject their payment adjustment request because it's not per spec. So, is there any questions? We're forcing the contractor. He has a spec. He knows what's required. Okay, so we'll put 0 back in there, and that strike through goes away, and that red goes away. If I had any MRI values that were in that mandatory correction level, instead of seeing a dollar amount here, I would see must correct in red. And this cell up here counts how many of those there are. So both these have to be 0 to get a dollar amount adjusted. Okay, now we'll go into the MRI max and ALR max. Okay, so now with these new specifications, in the past all we had to do was check that MRI was 75 and the LR is 160. That's, we still have kind of the similar case, now it's up to 90 with deduction, and it's still it's 160. Unless we go into percent improvements and those numbers go up. Well, they're going to go up for every segment. They might be something different if you're in percent improvement. So when they change, the value is going to display in this column Q here. So I can see here that the values, if we look at all the MRI values, the job went into percent improvement. So I have a MRI max it's at 93.7, and my ALR max is at 160 when you do all the math. The ALR max threshold is based on that target times 2.1. There's a lot of equations all through these specs. And this calculates everything for you. Yeah.
So with the ALRs, so as an RE then, how does an RE figure out if the ALR really was 0?
Okay. All right. So that's the next step here. Yeah. Now all this stuff, if you guys are falling asleep right now, which I can see half of you are, this is so exciting. All the steps you need are in this Appendix F. Later, you can click through this. So, okay, so now we're going to say we're the RE, right? And we're saying, okay, you guys you want this adjustment. Did you resolve all the ALRs? I got to verify all the ALRs are gone. So I'm going to go into my ProVal file that you gave me, contractor. I'm going to get the localized roughness report. So what is localized roughness? it's a continuous moving average roughness of a 25 foot long sliding segment, right? So to get that, I'm in ride quality. What do you think I should pick? Overall continuous or fixed interval? Continuous moving average, right? Think you got to think that way. You're talking about ALR moving. You need to recognize what it is. And we're going to look at IRI because that spec applies per wheel path, the localized roughness. And I'm going to go look at his final profile. And he should have gave me that final profile, 3 of ALRs, right? And right now there's a threshold number in there of 90. I'm going to put 160 in there just so I have that red line on there and I can see where things went over. I know I have one segment where that one segment was 160. Everything was 160 on this project. Okay, I've selected the final profile. I'm going to analyze it. Now, it's going to give me the localized roughness of each wheel path. And I can see that 160 value right there. I can see there's locations in the wheel paths that didn't go over, that they didn't address the localized roughness. So by spec, I'd say, spec says you're supposed to give me a surface that doesn't have any LRs over 160. What do you, this has values over 160. I can't accept this. Fix it. So that's how you get to the localized roughness report. So if I were to look at each one of these, I could go to the table here, and I get another table, but it's, I have 2 things, I have the left and the right chosen here. I got a choice of the 2, so right now I'm looking at the left wheel path. I can look at a different table for the right wheel path. These are all the locations where the ALR started going over 160 and where it went back under, and then the peak value. So the contractor gave me this file. He should have addressed his ALR. This is the spec.
So for the beginning, I'm just curious, for the beginning of the profile run, does profile give you the coordinates of the first point, the first semi-permanent reference point?
I think in the viewer or the editor, it'll show that in there somewhere. Okay, here's the other thing that in this video I made for contractors to make sure that all these profiles line up with each other. Is that what you're getting at? How would you check that?
Yeah.
Okay, so in this video that shows how to, kind of walks a contractor through the steps they need to do is, okay, what I want is I want a report that will show me where ALR, or where some IRI values were calculated, MRI or IRI. What I like, the one I think is best to look at is, you can look at it's, the ALR report is the 25-foot moving average of both wheel paths. If I want to look at all 4 profiles, I'm going to have 8 lines, right? I'm trying to minimize the amount of lines. I'll pick MRI. That'll change it to 4 profiles, 1 line per profile, 4 lines. I can go ahead and select all the profiles. And these files are lined up. And if you were to take any project where people just didn't care about lining these profiles up, you're not going to see this. So I can basically, that's the localized roughness average of both wheel paths. We don't have a spec on that, but it's one plot per line. But you look in the legend here, the yellow is existing, blue's baseline, green is pave, and pink is final. This is a 6-mile long job, so I see 6 miles on the screen here. I can click this magnifying glass and look at a 1/10 mile at a time or a 1/2 mile at a time. I'm looking at a 1/2 mile at a time. I can slide forward by clicking the bar here. Nope. Let me go back to the beginning here. The most important thing, again, is that all these profiles, they start at the same point, right? Because all the MRI values, all the values coming out here are going to be based on those common stations that go into a table. I'm looking at them. They seem to line up with each other. Down here, this leave out, yeah, it looks like everything lines up. If somebody forgot to put a leave out in, or the leave outs were way different, you'd be able to notice it on this report. Then the other part is over here on the contractor sheets. There's some columns here I put in here to help them figure out if there's misalignment issues, what the issues are. So everything is based on the existing profile. So when we're looking at that data for the existing profile, we see the start distance, the stop distance of that segment, the length of that segment. Most of them are 528 until we get to one that's right before a leave out, then it's a partial. The segment number. Okay, so remember this 483 number. So if I go to this next profile, their baseline, that 483 number came here. This is a different number. This is from the base. That's a slightly different partial segment length than this one. You know, I can see that, you know, it's a 1/4 foot difference in stationing, which is less than what our specification tolerance is our alignment tolerances are. They have to be within, for the first mile, it's got to be within 20 feet. Seems like a lot when the 10th mile can be, you know, you only have when they're running the DMI, you only have a plus or minus a foot in 528 feet. Why can't I be 20 feet off in the first segment, right? Well, if you're on a highway, it's one lane in both directions, I can put a reflector out there. And when I'm driving the inertial profiler down, I can set it up so that it's going to read the reflector. I just click a button, the reflector's coming up, and then it picks it up automatically, and it figures out what that station is. If I'm in the middle of a freeway, you know, it's 4 lanes over, I put the cone over there, I'm not going to be able to pick it up. So I'm going to have to use the other option in the profiler where I'm clicking it, right? You're doing 50 miles an hour, 60 miles an hour. If you can get within 20 feet, that's halfway between 2 reflectors. That's pretty accurate. So, I mean, you know, we recognize that there's going to be some tolerance issues. So, you know, that's if there are any misalignment issues, they'll see a lot of red on this page. So now we can look at, I know for a fact on this project that every one of these leave outs, everything looks good. They all line up with each other. There's a leave out there. You can see it lines up. They're all in line with each other visually. I can zoom out a 10th mile scale if I want. But when I get to the end, you know, there's I don't know, I just didn't slide all the way down to the end real fast. There you go. It's hard for you to see this, but the existing profile ends down here somewhere. 50 feet is from here to here. So once I get over 2.5 miles, I can be up to 50 feet off. So a couple of these are not within 50 feet, the last station. So on our spreadsheet should tell us there's a misalignment issue. We can see red here, it says misaligned. Down here we can see, you know, one of these is 67 feet when it can't be over 50. So there's some issues there. They should have moved that marker up for the end. You know, if I looked at this, it was the last station. It's like, does it matter? You know, it's not that big of a deal. If I had a misalignment issue somewhere in the middle here, it's going to carry through the whole project. So it's going to make everything off.
Hey, Pete, does that kind of happen at the end of everything when you're doing a 4-lane road and they're coming back the other way and going and starting from the upper end of the project?
Okay, so this.
In other words, we're going northbound on I-5. We're on those two. You can see the marker, but maybe when they flip around, come the other way, they're going down station, right?
Okay, so with the inertial profiles, when I'm in the inertial profile vehicle, I have to tell. I haven't run one of these. I just am told how they have to initialize what that beginning station is, right? Then they have to say, is it going to increase or decrease, right? So you going north or east, you'll put that beginning station in, and it's going to increase. Okay, so if I get to the other end and I'm at post mile 0, and I'm at post mile 10 at the north end, I think it makes sense to put 0 because 0 miles times 5,280 feet is 0 feet. If I was 1 mile up, I'd start at 5280. Our specs don't say they have to do that, but if I'm 10 miles up, that one is going to end up at 10 times 5,280 feet. That'll be the station. Okay, I'll put that in, and I'll say, okay, decrease, right? I'm going to drive south, and those numbers are, the DMI is going to decrease. Okay, when I go into that software in the profiler, I have to tell it, give me a file that ProVal can read. It's going to give me that PPF file. There's a lot of other file formats. It's going to give me the PPF file. And when I bring it into ProVal, I'm going to see minus 5,280 or 52,000, whatever the number is, 280 times 10. And it's going to those are going to be negative numbers, approaching the zero. It has to do that because when you're looking in ProVal, you want everything to go from left to right. So this plot goes from left to right. If I was heading southbound, I'd be going left to right. I'm just going to have negative numbers. Do you follow? Or? Yep.
I'm talking about the difference in the alignment at the end.
Oh,
It has to do with them turning off the equipment.
Yeah, this is I called a buddy and asked him for 4 profiles. He's in the industry that line up, and I think he didn't go. These aren't existing baseline pave and find. These aren't actual files because he hadn't had the spec yet, right? But he just gave me 4 profiles. I think one of these might be on a cold plane surface, or who knows. I renamed them, so I have these data.
Look at when we do it on the old stuff. Sometimes when you have starts and stops and openings.
Yeah, but when you get to the
It all
end,
has to do with the operator being really aware of where that cone is.
Yeah, so-
the first few days.
yeah. So when you get to the end, your DMI and all the profiles should be within 50 feet by spec. But there's, that's what we're saying right now. When you get a long job, maybe that's too tight. If that happens and you have an issue, call headquarters. We'll say, okay, there's some special cases I can think of right now. I don't want to go into them, but
My job is 20 miles long.
yeah. So 20 miles if you're off a foot.
We were off about 63 feet max, but
Yeah, that's.
I
Yeah, I don't, that's the other thing, like we're comparing, this whole thing about comparing something to something when they're not exactly the same sections of road they have values on. We're willing to say, okay, that 50-foot number was kind of arbitrary. It was kind of like, okay, it's 10% of 528 feet. Overall, if we did everything we could to get these things to line up exactly, we'd have a number that's 3 cents different. Whatever. It's going to be, in the end, everything's going to even out roughly. So it's just, but we don't want something like this. You can't compare this section to this. If it gets like that, we're good. But if it's, like that, that's not good. Right? So. Okay, so.
Can you scroll that back to the left where you were showing us before the leave outs up here on that?
Yeah, you want the last leave out, maybe is what you're looking for?
Leave out, any leave out. You had leave outs going across that thing, right?
Yeah. There's 4 of them in here. I probably scanned by a bunch real quick. There we go.
Anyway, I just wanted to be able to show. So that leave out right there is what, 10 plus 200, 100 plus 550. So if you go to your spreadsheet, right, you can see the leave outs on your spreadsheet.
Yeah, yep. So we're at station 100,200.
Yeah.
I go to station 100,200.
The significance of the colors, I don't think you've explained that.
Oh,
leave out
yeah.
show.
Let me go back here. I think I might. $89,660. I don't know why that other leave out's not showing up in there, but. So on this spreadsheet, you'll see the different colors of, we see blue and pink and blue. These partial segments that are on the existing file, they're the last segment that's in that colored section. So there's that one that's at 89,660. So
It jumps from there to 90,000, so that's a leave out.
yeah, this is a leave out. Yeah, and we also have the section numbers here, section 1, section 2. These are our section numbers between leave outs. We got segment numbers over here. Okay, now, so that's what we're doing to check the profiles. So now we know we have, the basic jobs are covered right now. So let's say we had a job that had a full width segment correction. We go back to that slide and it says, okay, full width segment correction, you're skim grinding the whole job. We're going to add one opportunity for improvement. We want the MRI 0 value that we're calculating, the target value to be calculated from the existing. So this yellow column here, wherever we see yellow, it's user input. This column here is called full width segment correction. Here we're clicking segment 2, the contractor put in, he changed 1 to 2 opportunities. And what that basically went, the general rule that's in our spec is, this is something I didn't really cover on in detail here. So we have the start, stop, segment length, and the existing profile. That comes from the existing profile. Now we have the baseline profile, the paved profile, and the final profile. We don't bring the stations in again because everything's based on the existing. When we calculate MRI 0, we're basically taking the lower of the existing or the baseline. So here we had, this first segment, we had an existing MRI of 119. And they went out there and did some structural repairs, so the MRI value went down to 89. So we're going to calculate the baseline. We're going to calculate the MRI 0. I shouldn't call it baseline. That's the name of the profile. Based on the lower of those two. So that's where we get MRI 0 from. Now, we look at the second segment. We have the existing and the baseline. Well, the existing was 159, and the baseline was 92. This one's saying 159. When I check this full width segment correction over here, it just locks this MRI 0 value into existing profile. You'll see this number change here. If I unselect that, it takes the lower of the two. If I select it, it's a full width segment correction. We're skim grinding that 10th mile. And I'm adding 2 opportunities for improvement. Then our MRI 0 is 159 and we use it. This column here shows what pay table we're using. And on this job, it's primarily the 75 target table that maxes out at 450. That's what that 75 pay 450 means. And if it's a percent improvement table, it's PI pay 450. That's the abbreviations I used on this. So here the MRI was over 135, so it went to percent improvement. And that's how we're calculating the adjustment. Now we have this other thing called partial width segment correction. So if I check this, what that's doing is, we're saying, okay, the baseline was 180. They went out and they came up with their correction plan. They did some grinding here and there. They didn't do very much. It was 150. You'd think they'd lower it down to 100 or 90. They went to 150. Well, the MRI 0 is 150, but that full width segment correction says we don't go into the percent improvement table. We're just going straight to the standard 75 target table. So that's because this would say PI pay 450 if I had this unselected. So if I didn't select that, we'd say I had an existing of 180. We did some structural repairs that went to 150 because that's over 135. I'm taking the lower of those two for the MRI 0 because that's over 135. I have to use a percent improvement table. We're using the percent improvement table there. But because it was partial width segment corrections, if I check that, it's going to go back to the standard 75 pay table. So you don't really need to know what it's doing. Just know that you got to check. You got to verify that these boxes are checked when they're supposed to be checked. So if there's partial width segment corrections or full width segment corrections, you're going to have to keep track of it. It'll be on your plans. You know, your plans are going to have stations on them. They're not going to exactly line up the stations here, but that's why God made engineers to figure out which ones go where, right? So, question? Okay.
On the full width segment correction, for the MRI 0, why does it go to 159.28 and not 92.01?
This one here? Oh, up here?
Yeah, for the full width segment
Okay, so
correction.
so full width segment correction, if you read the spec, it says use existing as your baseline. That's the thing where they named the existing profile and they called it the baseline profile. They initially meant this is MRI 0, which is commonly referred to as baseline, right? If I use my existing for baseline, I just put in 159 here and it ends up being MRI 0, right? We're using the existing file to determine what the MRI 0 is, to determine if it's percent improvement or not. We had the name of that changed to enter at one point in time, back to enter, because people were confusing baseline and MRI 0. But I still think we should change it back because it makes it easier to understand. But the spec calls it existing, baseline, and MRI 0. They're three different things. MRI 0 is one of those two. Okay, now these payment adjustment amounts right here, these are based on the PAVE number, right? So this column here is, you check this. If this said must correct, the contractor would typically check this. Okay, so I'm going to use the PAVE file here, but the dollar amount doesn't change. So the dollar amounts for this PAVE file and the final file are being calculated off to the side based on these pay tables. And because the PAVE file already wasn't in incentive, we can't increase the incentive once they already have incentive. You can't grind into an incentive. So when you check it, it's got the logic built in there, so it's not going to increase it. Does that make sense? Or? So if the contractor had a bunch of mess corrects here, you would have seen this sheet with a bunch of, use the final file as the MRI value. Use the final MRI value. And the reason for that is, every time you run a profile, you'll get a different number. So if the contractor, they might have had let's say they were at that upper threshold and they had an 89.9, right? And the target, they can't go over 90. They had an 89 here. They had 89.99. I'm just making this real extreme. That would have been passing, right? Nothing changes. They go out and measure it again and it ends up being 91. If you use that final file, that would be a must correct. Well, he doesn't get double jeopardy. It's based on his first profile that we measured. So again, like these specs, there's a lot of tables, a lot of calculations. You really need to know, what all these yellow cells are for and make sure that, they have the right input in them. Everything else is just a function of a calculation out of a table. The most important ones are these first three here. Not the first three, but the lift thickness. If I were to change the lift thickness to 3/10, I'm going to have an entirely different set of tables. And it's got a tougher spec. There's an issue somewhere. We have a mandatory correction somewhere.
So if I look at the first
This one went out of spec, so let's say, here's a good example, like using the pay file, it's out of spec, it's over 80. We're using that 60 pay 900 table. They went out and did some corrections. They checked that. Now they're getting their deduction based on that last number.
the first two columns, the partial width full width segment correction. That's gonna come off the plans. Like, I either got a quantity for it, or I don't have a quantity for it.
Yep.
Those boxes are just gonna come straight off the plans, right?
Yep. So this unit of measure is each, right? Segments are each? I was thinking it was going to be 10th miles or whatever. You called them each? Yeah. Okay. I didn't know that. I haven't seen the bid item yet.
So you'll roll through the plans, check those boxes if you have them or not. and roll on.
Yeah, this is going to be, contractor, engineer got to work together to, look at the table and say which one of these segments, maybe you have one extra or there's overlap.
And those boxes will determine your opportunities. The opportunities can also be determined based on your payment.
Yeah, so if I have partial width segment correction here, it doesn't matter what I choose here. Nothing's going to change because it's just locked into the 60 pay 900 table right now. Or
So the one that was.
okay, so if I went down here and I said, okay, use the final profile. We're using this MRI, which is passing. It's below 80. Now we have a dollar amount calculated. And what's kind of really strange is, in this example, I don't know how, if I change this to a 1500, watch the dollar amount. It changes, but not by very much. But when you look at all the individual numbers, they change a lot. Just every segment.
So can you go back down, right, start right there, stop. So on that second row, the segment number 2, the ALR max, the MRI max and ALR max. So can you explain that?
Yeah. Okay. So typically, your ALR is always going to be 160, and your MRI max is going to be either 80 or 90, depending on your layer thickness. MRI max is your mandatory correction level for MRI. Everybody with me? I've just been living and breathing this for a month or 2 or 3, so when I go look at a ProVal report, I know that I can type in that threshold of 80 for MRI or 90 for MRI and 160 for ALR. But there's a few exceptions. Some of these segments might have a number that's a little bit different. When they're different than what standard it displays here, I didn't want to have a bunch of 80s and 160s, filling this whole column up. You couldn't see the areas that are different, so that's the reason. And these only populate when there's percent improvement, which you can tell because every one of these equations start with PI, percent improvement, and there's some more text to give you an idea which table it is.
So the contractor would have on that one with the down arrow in it, the user input, he would be putting zeros in that whole column.
Yeah. Once he's certified that all the LRs are
And
required.
we're on the verifying side.
We have to check it, yeah.
Verifying.
Yep. There are cases where I'm not going to, I've got a few calls where, they had an ALR of like 220 and the guy ground it down to 159 when he measured it. Then they went and when he was out there, he had his profiler out there. He's measuring, those locations. Didn't run the whole job. It's 159. Then he runs through the whole job. Now it's like a 161 or something. It's like, there's the RE. He can look at that and say it's not in spec, or he can, he's. I don't think I'd want to tell the contractor, that grinder that you just put on the truck and hauled to 5 hours back to LA, yeah, bring that back up so I can make that a 159. And then go to a DRB and explain why you made him do that. I wouldn't. That's an extreme example, but that's spec. Headquarters, we should say, yeah, do it, right? But there's, RE's going to use some logic right there. So back to that black box, all those yellow arrows that were up there, those are the things you need to know how to do. All the yellow boxes on here are those yellow arrows, so how to check. Okay, so how does the spec rate is far as complexity to most of your other specs. We can do it. All these tables, they look like they're complicated and stuff, but really it's not. You're just, this tool here is.
So scroll back up to the top of the sheet real quick. I just want to summarize this, see if I can summarize this real quick.
Okay, some stuff I didn't cover here, but when the contractor's filling all this stuff out, he's putting the project ID in, the contractor name, he's got a drop-down choice. This is the list of contractor names that are from the EWB system. This first one, if you had a contractor name that wasn't in the extra billing system, you could plug it in over here, and then it populates the list so you can fill in this.
Let's go back to the other side, just back to where you had it. So, from an RE perspective, you're getting all this already filled out. You're just verifying this data in here, all these items, and then you're coming down here. He's got all the green stuff. Scroll it up a little bit. He's got all the green stuff filled out. You're checking boxes over here for full or partial width off the plans. You're importing these. If you got errors or data, it'll turn red. That's where you start zeroing in on and investigating.
Well, actually, these red ones here.
The whole cell would be.
Yeah, if the whole cell's red, that means there's an issue. These partial segments that are less than half of a tenth, less than, what's that, 460? I can't remember. 264. Half of 528 is 264 feet. The segment gets less than half a tenth. The specs say we're not making an adjustment on it because it's too short, but they still have to address the ALRs. Those go red just to let you know that it's not narrow over here. It's just no matter what the MRI values were. There's not going to be an adjustment calculated for it.
We're not paying incentives or disincentives based on a segment less than half of segment length, is what you're saying.
But they still have to, say there's no ALRs. So.
Okay.
Yep.
And then at the end, once it's all verified, you go to the top, green box, right there in the green box. That's the amount you pay on the supplemental fund.
Okay, so the other part is when you look at our specs, there's file naming conventions. So when the contractor fills all this stuff out, he puts a contract number in. I should have put the dash in there. 10, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So once they put the contract number in, this fills in the district. And once you have the district number, there's a drop-down list based on the counties in that district. Once you have the district and the county, there's a drop-down list for the routes that are available. We need to know the last 6 characters of the EA to put in the file name. This is the file name up here. All the text, all the information we're entering in these yellow cells is being used to, populate the file name. So you have to work from left to right across here. So they can go ahead and click a save button, and it basically, it assembles that file name for you automatically. And you can copy that text and rename your PVP file so it has the same name, but just ends with PVP.
Okay.
And then, so let's say you agreed with this adjustment, you click this and it gives you a printout. Sometime between now and next month. Today's the 20th, right? There's your payment. That's your backups you can use to support that adjustment for 26,100, whatever that number is. So, okay, we're good. Is there any questions or? Okay, I guess we'll do a quick